Love. Some would say it took a backseat when the pandemic forced us apart. As a family-run and proudly Canadian-owned company, Charm Diamond Centers saw the need to bring us together with tales of love and created the Canadian Love Map podcast. Since then, we've shared hundreds of real, uplifting stories that prove love conquers all. So thank you for listening. We couldn't do it without you. And remember, love starts here. Hi, I'm Nancy Regan. Thanks for tuning in. Over the summer months, the Canadian Love Map team is hard at work finding new stories for our upcoming 7th season. In the meantime, we're dipping into the vault to share some of our favorite episodes of all time. Enjoy this Love Map Gold. We'll be back with Season 7 in September. Hi, I'm Nancy Regan. This week's love story belongs to Marisa and Anthony, teen sweethearts who married young and welcomed 3 beautiful daughters over 9 years of marriage. But when Anthony died at 36, Marisa was left with intense grief and the responsibility of helping her young kids through the pain. Recently, though, a nostalgic search for an old car of Anthony's that was his prized possession went viral, and the rest of the story is incredible. Enjoy. Hi, Marisa. Great to talk to you.
Nice to talk to you as well.
I'm so excited to share this story of yours, and I know that it involves the love of a car, but I think we should start with the human love.
Yes, absolutely.
Tell me about your story.
So Anthony and I met quite young. I was 16 years old. He was 19. We both worked at a local grocery store in our neighborhood, as did many of the teenagers that lived around there. And, to be honest, it was love at first sight. We started dating I was about 16 years old, and we dated for over 9 years. And went strong for a total of 9 years.
Wow.
It was quite amazing considering how young we started. And then we got married. I was still pretty young, about 25 years old, and we were married for about 9 years as well. So 18 years spent with Anthony.
Wow, that is amazing. And do you remember the first time you met him in the grocery store, was it?
So I didn't actually meet him at the grocery store. I had met him through his sister, who I had gone to elementary school with. So he would often come back to the elementary school that we all went to, and he'd visit his sister. He was 3 years older than me. And it's funny because a bunch of us in the class, we all had crushes on him. He was our friend's older brother, and it just drove her crazy. And then we started working together at the grocery store, and my crush continued. And then, it just kind of, we both opened up about it. And from that point on, the relationship started.
Oh, that's fantastic. And you were married, you said, for 9 years.
Yes.
And you had 3 kids during that time?
We did, yes. So we got married in 2002, and then about 4 years later had our first child. And then 2.5 years after that, had a set of twins.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
So you had a busy life.
We definitely did. Yes. It was very busy.
And what were you driving when you had all these kids?
So before we had our first, I had been driving a Honda Civic, and Anthony had his CRX. And this was before I knew I was pregnant. And then when I got pregnant, we realized, okay, we've got to buckle down and really make some smart choices with our vehicles now. So I ended up switching to a Honda CRV. So we had an SUV in the family, and just felt more comfortable knowing that, we had space for a car seat and our growing family. And at that point, Anthony had already sold his CRX that he had been driving. And I believe he had purchased another type of Honda, but it was still, not, the family size car, because I took care of that with the CRV.
Okay. So tell me about that CRX. How much did it mean to him and or you?
Yeah, so Anthony, obviously he loved cars, and he was also an auto mechanic. So throughout his life, he did own quite a few cars. It was easy for them to buy cars, fix them, sell them. And the CRX, though, that was one of his favorite vehicles, and it was just his pride and joy. He had put so much work into the car. He had made it his own, and what I mean by that is the color that he chose to paint the car really did kind of define, it basically was one of those things that stood out. So everyone knew that that car belonged to him. It was this interesting orange saffron color that he had chosen. And because of that, you could spot him on the road. Anywhere you were, you knew that that was Anthony. So not only the color, but he was a Honda guy. He loved Hondas. But by far the CRX was one of his favorites. And if you speak to people today that owned a CRX, it's amazing to hear the passion that comes from these people. There's so much love for this vehicle, and I've learned that just throughout this process of looking for this car, that it just amazes me. And if you find one today, they're rare, and they're actually going up in value, which is incredible to know after 30 years of this car being around.
All right, so if all things had gone well, you would have been on this podcast together telling me this story.
Yeah.
But of course, that's impossible. And I'd love for you to just share with us the next chapter, which I know was really brutally hard.
Yes. Yep. It was definitely something that no one would ever imagine having to go through at such a young age. So I would say we were obviously 9 years married at this point. We had the three girls. The oldest was at the time 5 years old, and the twins were 2.5. I should actually rewind a little bit. When the twins turned 1 year old, and Sienna would have been around 3. Anthony was diagnosed with liver cancer, which came as a shock because Anthony was quite healthy. He was the kind of guy that never got the common cold, never had the flu. He was generally healthy, didn't drink, didn't smoke, and one day just had some odd pains, looked into it, and he ended up finding out that he had liver cancer. So just a shock to us all, and of course, you're fearful of what's next, but he was able to have the surgery, and they told him everything was okay at this point. So we were trying to kind of get back on our feet, try to move forward with our lives. At that point, we actually started to look into designing a new custom built home. We had purchased a home that we were planning to tear down and rebuild. So in the process of that happening, we were 6 months post-surgery, and he had done another CAT scan and realized that the cancer had come back. And at this point, it was just treatment after treatment. So really, all in all, it was about a year from start to when we lost him, about a year and a half, actually, from when he had the surgery to when he had passed away. They had tried everything, every treatment possible, but unfortunately, the cancer was quite aggressive, and it was just any cancer patient knows that it's one of those things where you're fighting against time. Like you're trying everything you possibly can to survive, and unfortunately, that wasn't the case for Anthony.
The love and support that you're met with is also an anesthetic to some extent to your pain, right? Because it's overwhelming when you realize how much support there is for you, as I'm sure there was for you.
There absolutely was, and not just from my immediate family, but just my friends, my close friends, and the people that were stood by me from the very beginning until today, and just little things like knowing that you could see someone for a few hours on the weekend. Those were the types of things that I would look forward to just to get me through those dark days. And that's what my friends did for me. They'd always manage to plan something with me and just kind of keep me looking ahead.
Amazing. Okay. But at some point you looked back and thought about that old CRX.
That CRX was thought about quite a few times over the course of the last decade. We lost Anthony in 2011, and that CRX has come up in many conversations, especially with his friends. And he was an auto mechanic, and his best friend and business partner told me himself that he had tried to look for that car over the years, hoping it would pop up on Auto Trader or Kijiji, and a few people said they had seen it over the years, but no one had actually pursued the search until recently. And it's funny how it came from someone that I would have at least expected it to come from. And it was Anthony's cousin who brought it up to me and just said to me, "Hey, what if we just start looking for that orange CRX?" And I thought, okay. But in my mind, I thought, people have tried, people that are car enthusiasts, CRX fans and people that I know would love to own that car again have tried looking. So I thought, his cousin Julia, she's not a car person, but I said, good luck. You can absolutely start looking. I don't know where you would start, but anything I can do to help.
You weren't that hopeful.
I wasn't, only because, it's been 20 years since he sold the car. And I thought at this point, if the people that were looking for it in the past haven't found it, what are the chances that we will so many years later?
And this is where the investigative work starts, I guess. Tell me this crazy story.
So it was a whirlwind. So she had reached out to me mid-January with this idea, and all she wanted from me was his license. And she thought, let's go back to the insurance company that once insured that car. Maybe they can help us. We need to find the VIN. I thought, well, I don't know how we're going to find the VIN. I have his license, which was another process for me to have to go through old documents, and because I keep all of that kind of safely put away, and so that was an emotional process. But I thought, I'm going to do this for her. And as I was doing that, I started to get a little bit, I was getting motivated. I'm like, I'm going to help her with this. So I thought, okay, so we've got the license, and maybe a few people were telling us you can run some Ministry of Transportation reports to look back at, who's owned the car, but we still need the VIN number. That's what's missing here. Mm-hmm. So for some strange reason, and I'm still friends with the guy that Anthony sold the car to, at least I'm connected to him on Instagram. And I just thought I'd reach out, and I asked him, his name is Mario. And I said, Mario, do you know anything about that car and how we could start looking for it? He still had the ownership because he loved that car so much.
His old papers.
He's had it tucked away. He's like, wait a second, I have the ownership. He goes, I have the VIN. So from there, we took the information, and I have to say, Julia, Anthony's cousin, is who led this whole search process. She's the one who went out to the Facebook groups. She looked into, CRX Ontario and a bunch of different car enthusiast groups, and she put this post out with all this information, a photo of Anthony with the car, and now the VIN number. And I would say maybe 3, 4, or 5 days in, she got a call from Global News wanting to help with the search and wanting to cover the story. So great. Yeah. So we're realizing this is getting a lot more attention than we ever would have imagined. And that was when I started thinking, wow, like this is, I would never have expected, this being covered by a news station. But once that happened, I feel as though it opened a few more doors for us because people saw the segment. And from there, I would say not even 3 days after it aired, we found the car. And there is a lot that happened in between. But to give you a very quick synopsis, when we ran the report for with the VIN number, we were only able to get up to the last registered owner, and it was 2008. So I thought, wow, there's lots of, and it's interesting because he explained to us, he sold it in 2008. So he didn't have it for a very long time, or maybe 2009. So he had it for about a year. And we were able to track him down, speak to him. And he told us that unfortunately he had painted the car. So that made the search a little more difficult.
So what color car were you looking for now?
So now we're looking for an electric blue colored car.
Oh, wow. The plot thickens.
The plot thickens. So we had to update all of the information on our social pages. And what's interesting is not only was it painted blue, but after being in the hands of a few more owners after him, which we had to track down. And it was all through word of mouth because none of these owners had registered the vehicle after 2008. So it was literally, he passed us on to the next owner. We managed to contact him. He told us he had sold it to this person. So that's really what it ended up coming down to, was word of mouth and continuing to post information on these Facebook groups. And people recognized the blue vehicle because it had a very distinct lime green painted engine bay. So that's what made it stand out now. And it literally came down to, I think the last person who owned that car, and this was someone that reached out on Facebook, said he lives in and around this area in Toronto. And so now we don't have a location. We have just an intersection.
So, oh my gosh.
So it's just so anyways, it just, from there, someone was able to tell us that they were called seeing this vehicle, this colored vehicle, the CRX, in a parking lot at this location, this intersection that we had. So I had a couple of friends do a Google Earth search, and lo and behold, the vehicle has been parked behind a mechanic shop at the intersection that we had narrowed it down to. And it has been parked there for 2.5 years.
So you could see it actually on the Google Earth camera? You could actually see oh my gosh,
from
that's
different
crazy.
angles you could see. And obviously, because it's been parked there for so long, it was literally recorded on Google Earth for the last 2 years. So it was easy to find that way. And that same day that we did the Google Earth search, I had a couple of friends drive to the location and match the VIN for me. So they were able to look in the car, because it's an abandoned car now in a parking lot, and doors were open and you could go right into it. And here it is. And there's a VIN number and it matched.
They must have been so excited when they matched the VIN.
Yes, that moment. And actually at that moment, I was on FaceTime with these two friends that did this for me, because it was a Sunday night and I couldn't leave the girls. And they got to the location. They FaceTimed me. They did a tour of the car. They showed me the VIN number. I'm like hysterical. But this is where it got really emotional. So as a friend of mine was panning around the car, obviously the vehicle looks nothing like it did. It's electric blue. It's run down. It's missing parts. It has no parts. It's basically a shell of a vehicle. But there were these stickers on the window of the car that Anthony had put there over 20 years ago. They were a car, it was a car part. It was called Eibach is the company name, but they were these special springs that they put in these cars. And I recall, I still have photos of Anthony with the car and these stickers, these decals on the windows. They are still on the car 20 years later after so many owners. And it was eerie to me. I thought, oh my goodness, like, how have those not been removed? But this car has been completely, changed. So that was that last detail that really, the VIN number confirmed it all. But to me, that was a sign from Anthony saying, I'm right here. You found me.
I was just going to say, it was a CRX SI, right?
It was, yes.
So I think SI has got to stand for spiritual intervention.
Oh my goodness. I've never thought of it that way.
I was going to say to you, do you believe in coincidence? Because this is a lot of coincidence happening here.
Absolutely. Wow. Yeah.
That is amazing. So when did you first see the car? Other than on Facebook, on FaceTime.
Yes. So that very next day. So I think it was about, I'd say closer to the end of January at this point, maybe, I'm not sure of the exact date, but it was a Monday. We drove to the location and we saw the car. And it turns out that the gentleman that purchased the car owned the mechanic shop where the car was parked. So we spoke to him and just tried to understand what his plans were for the car, because it's been sitting there for a couple of years and clearly nothing's been done. So he did have plans to restore it, but never got around to it. So we asked him, would you be willing to give this car up? We'd love to buy this car from you. And he was a bit hesitant at the beginning because he wasn't really sure. He didn't know the story that had already, aired on Global News. And we told him this is the story, and this car, has so much more sentimental value to us than I'm sure it would to you sitting here in this parking lot. So, he gave it some thought, and then we left him. We thought, you just think about it. And then we showed up the very next day, and he graciously gave us the car because he was just so overwhelmed with the emotions of the story, and he wanted us to have it.
That is amazing. Why don't you tell me his name? We might as well give him a shout out.
Yes, his name is Nathan Siva, and he works at, it's called a Mobile One Lube Express shop in just in the Greater Toronto area.
And so he gave you the car.
Gave us the car, handed over the ownership, and gave us the car.
How did that moment feel?
It's so emotional. I did not expect him to do that. And then not that we had even approached him in that way. We were willing to pay whatever the car was worth to him, but he had a similar story, obviously not having lost somebody, but there was a car that him and his wife had sold once, and they still talk about to this day, and they wish they never had. And he thought, that your story really resonated with me, and he really wanted us to have it. So it was just surreal. And the girls were with me, which was such a beautiful moment to receive that.
Wow. And are they going to fight over who gets to drive it first?
I think we're all going to fight over who gets to drive this car. Well, they're going to have to learn how to drive standard, so that might sway them a little bit.
That's good. That's good for you.
Yes,
Marisa. Don't teach them how to drive a standard and you'll have it to yourself. Okay, so you've created an Instagram feed detailing now how you're bringing it back to life.
Yes, I have. And it's actually been quite a fun process for me. I mean, I have to say it's another full-time job because there's so much, there has been so many overwhelming responses to the page, people wanting to help with, donating parts to the car, wanting to follow along in the restoration. So I feel this, it motivates me more when people are, excited to see what's coming next. But I felt this was the best platform for us to kind of document the journey. And, given that that's where most of our friends and family are. And then of course, the car community is out there. So it's just easy to get on there and follow along. But we started it immediately after we got the car. I posted some videos of the car coming home. And I say coming home, it's been brought back to Anthony's mechanic shop, which is, that's also kind of serendipitous that it's back where, it started. So now it's there, and we've been going in, every other weekend to start kind of the process. And it's a big undertaking. The car is in pretty rough shape. Mechanically, I've got a lot of people that are happy to help, but the body is one of the biggest challenges right now because it's quite rusted out and it needs to be repaired in order for it to be safe. So that's where we're at now. And the nice thing is, though, is as we're dismantling parts of the car, and the last thing we did this past weekend was take the doors off, you can see a little remnant of the orange saffron peeking through. And everybody that saw that last post is like, they're just all, oh my gosh, I'm feeling so emotional right now. And I'm like, well, we're going to bring it back. We're definitely
Can you match that color?
Absolutely. I mean, I've looked the color up, and it's still, you can find it online, the paint code and everything. So, and given that the color is still on the car, I'm sure we could actually match to what's there, but it still exists.
Do you want to?
Absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely.
That color's coming back.
It's coming back. Yeah.
That's great. I love the response. Like, the thing that occurs to me is that it's been a vehicle for human kindness.
Yes, it really truly has. I love how you put that. I feel like given, this past year and there's just been so much negativity, and, it's just everyone is just hungry for some great stories and great news, and the people that have rallied around the story as well. I mean, one thing that I didn't mention was once we were able to get the car back at the shop, a lot of people were saying to us, in order to restore this vehicle, you should look into a donor car. And this is all new. These are new types of, lingo for me, because I am not a car person. So I'm like, what's a donor car? Well, your best bet is to find a donor car that you can literally take all the parts out of and put into your car, rather than trying to source everything individually, because this car is 20 years old and it's very difficult to find the parts.
Right.
So that's what we set out to do. And within 24 hours, we had someone reach out and tell us, I think I have exactly what you need. We purchased the car from this gentleman. And he then took the proceeds of the purchase, and he donated to a mental health charity.
Oh, come
which
on.
was a beautiful story in and of itself as well.
Wow.
So that just got everybody so inspired. And I just feel like there's so much good around this. It's less about just us bringing this car back and more about, people just kindness. You're absolutely right. That's exactly where this is gone. It's just been incredible.
I think that's just an amazing story. And I can't wait to see it restored. I know people are going to want to follow this on Instagram. So the handle for the Instagram account is Anthony's CRX. Is that right?
That's right.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Well, it's been great to talk to you. Is there anything that we didn't talk about that you wish we had?
If anyone's listening that's gone through any kind of loss, maybe lost a partner in their lives, lost anyone really, the one thing that I would want to say is, no matter how difficult the journey is, and to never just the one thing I found that was important for me was to accept the grief and to allow it to happen, because you want to feel, and you never want to stop thinking or loving that person. Keep them alive. And life it will work out itself. You will find happiness in some form, but I just really encourage people to have that hope, to keep going. Because it's not an easy journey, but you will pull through it.
Marisa, you are amazing. And I can tell that you deserve all the happiness you have.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
My name is Marisa Petitella. I recorded my segment with Canadian Love Map about 2 years ago. When I reflect back to the episode, it really was a time where I was overwhelmed with, so many people being so invested in my story. And really, I was grateful for that. It was hard to believe that it was happening at the time and that so many people were so interested in hearing about it. I really did enjoy sharing it with the audience of Canadian Love Map. The one thing that stood out to me the most was, just the heartfelt conversation I had with Nancy. And one thing she said to me when we were talking about my husband's 1990 CRX SI was the SI could stand for spiritual intervention. And that is something that I've never forgotten. Just given the way everything happened with us finding the car, I really do believe that is true. I do think people should listen to the story. I think it is such a beautiful story and really does kind of echo, that there is hope, that if, someone has experienced a loss and grief, just know that, they're always around you. And this story is proof of that. And where are we now? So the car has actually been repaired. It is home. We've been enjoying it this summer. It is back to its luster and shine. We've been bringing it to a lot of different car events, and it's been such a wonderful experience.
Thanks so much for listening to the Canadian Love Map. If you love us, please subscribe and share. We'll be back next week with another love story to add to the map. This podcast is brought to you by Charm Diamond Centers, Canada's largest family-owned jewelry store. They are proud to be putting love on the map, and the staff at Charm Diamond Centers are thrilled to be a part of your love story too. So visit charmdiamondcenters.com or one of your local stores. Love starts here. This podcast is made possible by Charm Diamond Centers. It's hosted by me, Nancy Regan, and is produced and distributed by Podstarter.